Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Armchair Crew Chief. We are officially in playoff seasons for 2 of our 3 series here. So we'll go run through some stuff. We had an interesting setup here this past weekend. We had trucks run on Sunday. We had Xfinity on Friday, and we had Cup Series on Saturday. So this was the regular season finale for the Cup Series. Pretty much everything was cemented with the exception of the regular season champion and the final spot of the championship, the 16th spot. So we got our clear definer winner of the regular season roughly, I think it was at the beginning of stage 2 we found out who that was, and then our last guy got the 16th final spot. Pretty much never gave it up. So we had that going on, and then we had the truck series. They were 2 races in to this was their second race. And then now we have Xfinity going in, and they're going to be going 2 more races, and then they hit their playoffs. So we're soon to be in full playoff season in NASCAR series in general. So let's go ahead and dive into everything that happened. We're going to go ahead and start off with trucks. They were out at Milwaukee on Sunday. Milwaukee's a very interesting track. They haven't been there in a very long time. I think it was 97 was the last time they were there. It's the oldest managed track in the world. It's very flat. It's a little over a mile. We're talking 9-degree banking on the corners and 2 in the straights. So, compare that to like the 20-degree banking, or you look at a Pocono that's got, I think they have a 9, 12, and 14 for their turns. And so it's very, very flat, and you can tell that looking at the race. It seemed to be fairly lackluster at the beginning, and then we started getting into some of these cautions, people getting loose, just truck series racing. It turned out to be a better race towards the end, in my opinion. At the front, I couldn't really keep my personal attention, that bad on me, sure. So let's go ahead and just dive into everything and what happened on the truck series. We'll go ahead and start off with our lineup like we normally do. We're going to do top 5. Daniel Dye, 5th. Taylor Gray, Hocevar, 3rd. Nick Sanchez, 2nd. Grant Enfinger got the pole. I thought that Nick Sanchez was going to have a strong running this weekend, but unfortunately he got caught up in a wreck, ended his day early. So that didn't really help him out too much. Then just bumping into some of the other racing that we had. Grant Enfinger pretty much ran away with it. There was some spots where after pits at that stage where Carson Hocevar came up and he started running. He led quite a few laps. So Enfinger led 95 in the 175 laps, and he passed Hocevar in the final steps. He just had the stronger truck. Hocevar, I'll give it to him. He had a very strong run. He went, and on the last pit, he stayed out, which helped him bump up even more after his one pit. But Enfinger just had his better tires, got him around and forward. So, it's one of those that you gamble, and it didn't pay off, unfortunately. Corey Heim led some of the laps. It was just overall a good strong showing. I mean, Grant Enfinger, if you haven't picked up, he won the race. We are looking at our top 10. We had Bailey Curry, Jake Garcia, Derek Kraus, Ty Majeski, Chase Purdy, Matt Crafton, Corey Heim, Christian Eckes. Hocevar got 2nd, and Enfinger won. He started on the pole and finished on the pole, you could call it. So, I mean, he had a very strong truck. He was out there, and I think this is a good stab because we heard over the news on Wednesday that GMS Racing and GMS Fabrication is no longer going to be around after this year. We can talk a little bit more about that later on in this podcast. But, just to have a strong showing of GMS coming out and winning, and they're going out for a championship, and I hope they win it. I mean, I'm a Truex fan in the Cup Series, but even not being a Truex fan, I was kind of going for them. I would have expected to go for them probably for the championship back in 19, whenever that was the last running, or 18. I think it was 18. The last running for Furniture Row. I mean, you want to see a team like that has strong cars, won championships in the past, been around, a staple, go out there and finish strong and finish on the high note and, right off into the sun. So it was, it was an interesting race. Like I was saying, it had some wrecks going on, but it's not so unlike for the trucks. I mean, trucks, you have some inexperienced drivers going around. These trucks are a lot more difficult, in my opinion, to handle than running a car. So we did have some interesting stuff beforehand. Ty Majeski ended up had served a pass-through penalty and a rear of the field, and he ran through the field, did pretty decent going through it. He also had a tire confiscated and the crew chief, taken off his team for the penalties. We'll see what happens going forward, whether or not they fine the team or just whatever happens. Sanchez, as I said, I thought he was going to have something run, a good run, strong showing. He got up with Heim in lap 141, hit the wall. He couldn't go. I mean, unfortunately, that's what happened. We did have a multi-truck crash to be at the restart of stage 2. So it was one of those things that it happens. It's trucks. So, I mean, Rajah Caruth got caught up in some stuff. I think he would have had a better strong. He didn't do too bad, but I think he could have been up there or further up. He was just getting caught, like wrecks in front of him and so on. He finished 14th. The other person that we follow on this podcast, Haley Deegan, she finished 22nd. I still think trucks are not her thing. I'd like to see what she does in a Xfinity car and have more of just like a one-off and see how she can handle it. I don't think trucks are her spot. You look at SRX and she can handle up there, and you can argue that it's 12 cars, but she's running with some really good drivers. Tony Stewart, Boyer, some of the older guys out there, Schrader, and she can hang with them in a car and not just on dirt. Her strong suit's dirt, obviously based on her background. But anyway, so just moving on from there. So taking a quick look at the playoff standings for the Craftsman Truck Series, we have two guys that are locked in. We have Grant Enfinger with the win Sunday. Ty Majeski got a win at IRP. And we have, sitting on the outside looking in, we have Ben Rhodes, Matt DiBenedetto. Those two guys are looking on the outside in. Ben Rhodes is 3 points below the cut line. Matt DiBenedetto is 20 points. So it's still up. We have 2 races, I believe it is, and we'll check that schedule here shortly. But then you have, Zane Smith, Carson Osvar, Eckes. These guys are up there. I think a Kraft and Nick Sanchez are going to be your 2 guys that might come out and come back in. I don't know. We'll see what happens. We do have some interesting thing going forward with that. Let's see, the Truck Series. We're going to be going up to Kansas next week, September 8th. And then we have the Bristol race on the 14th. So just going through there and see what we can happen with there. Trucks are very, it's up in the air on what will happen with the trucks, in my opinion, with playoffs. One, the races, there's so much break in them. And then 2, you have just everything else that can happen. I mean, these guys, you're running with a lot more experience because it's a developmental bump up. So it's hard to tell. So September 8th, Kansas will be our last race. Then we run into the round of 8 where we're going to have Bristol on the 14th. And then you're going to have like 2 weeks off. Then you have Talladega the 30th, and then they're not racing until Homestead on the 21st. So, like I was saying, there's a big gap there to see what happens with these guys and what will happen. So, it's always up in the air. Matt Crafton, I have a fear, is going to be probably knocked out. I'd like to see Carson Hocevar, see what he can do going up there. He's running pretty strong. Grant Enfinger, like I said, it'd be kind of cool for him to come off on a high horse with GMS going forward, since they're kind of ceasing operations at the end of the season. And we'll just go on from there and see what happens. So just moving on now, we're going to go into Xfinity. Xfinity ran Friday night, and that was the Wawa 250. We'll go ahead and start on our qualifying and see where everybody started. Austin Hill, Sheldon Creed, Sammy Smith, Chandler Smith, and Parker Kligerman were your top five. You had the big one. I think that was towards the end in stage 3. Austin Hill ran away. He was strong. RCR cars were strong. Sheldon Creed was up there running really strong. And then you see some of the junior motorsports cars. They slowly started making their way up. I think it was Allgaier had to make a pass-through penalty, if I remember correctly, at the beginning of the race, and he was able to just rebound from that and get a strong showing. And then just going forward with that, he failed. So he failed pre-qualifying inspection 3 times. So he had to start from the rear of the field and was forced to serve a drive-through penalty with 4 other cars. But that didn't stop him from driving through the field. We bump into stage 2. Sheldon Creed, Austin Hill 1-2, Cole Custer 3rd, Sammy Smith 4th, Daniel Hemrick 5th. So you had these guys. I mean, John Hunter was up there. Trevor Bayne really had a strong car. I think the 2 strong cars out there were Austin Hill and Trevor Bayne. Sheldon Creed was up there in that mix too. RCR put out some really good super speedway cars for this race. And then we ended up having the big one. The big one came out on a restart. We had Trevor Bayne up front. I can't fully remember who was up there with him. He had Austin Hill behind him. And he just, they restarted. And then going on, Austin Hill tried to make that wide turn. I think he was still connected. One of the guys that listens to this podcast, he had differing opinions on that. He still thinks they were not linked up, and it was just the block. But anyway, he kind of hooked him a little bit, in my opinion. Caught him just the slightest bit, and he got him, unfortunately, and it caused the big one. It turned Trevor Bayne in the wall. You had Austin Hill get involved in that. You had, the 20 car get involved in that. Some of these strong guys that I think could have gone for a winning. Riley Hurst was involved. It like I said, it collected a lot of people. Let's see, just going over it. So with 30 laps to go was that big one. Riley Hurst left front exploded, messed up the car. This big one caught a lot of people. You still had Parker up there. You had, Parker Kligerman, I should say, not Retzlaff. Parker Retzlaff was doing pretty good. He's, he did really well. I'm good to see him going up. I like to see Sheldon Creed win some. We were kind of going for him a little bit just because he hasn't won anything. He finished second, really strong. Daniel Hemrick, he had a really strong showing back and forth. From the history from what I've seen, I think Hemrick struggles with just going back and forth with some things and not getting, either he can't push right or he's just not getting the push he needs. Speaking of pushing, Parker Kligerman, I think that dude could have won the race. He ended up not getting the pushes from anybody, really. Hemrick didn't push him. Some of these other guys didn't push him. He was having issues. He was in front of Cole Custer and trying to get the push to go forward, and Cole Custer at the end of the race. And I think this, it's one of those things. It's racing, but at the same time, it's like, don't say anything. And it, in my opinion, run your race as your team. I know you got to kind of go out there and help your teammate, but I think you're helping your teammate by racing with them, not hurting other people. And Cole Custer came out and said, he's like, yeah, I didn't push the 48, Parker Kligerman, because he's fighting for Riley Hurst for that final playoff spot. I'm like, come on, really? Your guy's out. He's even come out and said he's hated the history of his car stinking the whole time. I don't think that 98's getting in. And it's not going to be because they don't have a good driver. It's going to be because their team can't put a stinking car together that'll last the whole race or perform well enough to compete in a race. And that's been the story all season. So for Cole Custer to come out and say what he said, yeah, okay, you're a teammate, but at the same time, your teammate's crew can't get it together consistently for long enough. You need to just run your race because you could have done better too. Who knows? He could have gone out there and pushed Parker. They could have bumped up to second. Maybe Parker win. Then Cole Custer gets fifth. And yeah, I know Custer's in there for winning the two races. But still, you get more points. You could get higher up in the standings. You can see what happens. And so I had a problem with that. And that kind of frustrated me. I like to see Parker Kligerman race. I think it's cool that he is a Sunday TV analyst and he's running the race on Saturdays. So, I'm looking forward to that. I hope he makes the playoffs and I hope he beats the pants off some of these guys and just, it's one of those things to thumb your nose at him. Is he going to do that? No, he's not that kind of person, I think. But it's just one of those things. And he puts out some good quality content. If you guys check it out on social media, Parker puts out some good stuff. He'd be one cool guy to get and talk to. But anyway, let's go ahead and bump into our playoff standings. Remember, we have two more races here. We have the race this weekend at Darlington, and then we have Kansas for these guys. And that's going to be their last race until the playoffs. And then we bump into Bristol. So just looking at everything here, Austin Hill's up there, John Hunter, they're fighting for that regular season championship. Allgaier's making a stance for it too. I mean, he's really close. I think it's going to be between those three guys. Let's see what happens here. Just looking at the regular season, Justin Allgaier is higher than John Hunter just by 1 point though. So, I mean, and they're only separated by 28 points. So it's going to be something good to watch for the next two races and see what happens because these guys run strong and see if they get caught up in something or and see if one of them can run away with it. They've, Austin Hill and John Hunter have run away with things. Justin Allgaier's had the testament of fighting and clawing back on his races, either getting caught up in wrecks and not being able to finish, or he gets up there and then last minute somebody passes him or his car just doesn't operate the way it should be. So just going into that, our top five, we have Austin Hill, John Hunter, Allgaier, Custer, Sam Mayer. Our bottom guys that we're looking at here are Daniel Hemrick's 56 points, above the cutoff line. Parker Kligerman is 20 points above the cutoff line. Then you have Riley Hurst and the 20 points below. Again, I don't know if he's going to make it. And I'm just going by history. I think he's got the talent to make it in there. I think he's a really good driver, in my opinion. I think he's got crap equipment. And if you put him in another car that's not the 98, put him in a Chevy, put him in a Toyota. I like to see more Toyotas out there that can compete instead of just Joe Gibbs on the Xfinity side. And I think he can do something. Brandon Jones is 88 points. And then Brett Moffitt, I think he's one of those that you just can't, unless he wins to get in, I don't see him making it. So Brandon Jones, he's my long shot. I think Parker's going to get in there on that last 12th spot. Riley Hurst, unless he can show me that he did it. But then we're going to, Darlington's a good short track to see what happens. And then we're also showing up at some of these other, like Kansas, see what happens at Kansas. Kansas is one of those, snooze fest style tracks because it's a cookie cutter almost. So we'll see what happens. And go from there. And we'll see what happens. I think Austin Hill and John Hunter and Allgaier are going to be fighting for your championship. I think Austin Hill's got it. John Hunter can come out here and possibly win some stuff, and it might make it better. I don't know. It's going to be between those three guys, I think, unless one of these other guys sets the world on fire for these next few races to get up there. So moving on to the Cup Series. Cup Series, we had a big wreck, and then we had a wild, crazy wreck at the end. So just going through qualifying, let's go through qualifying first. As we do, we'll do top 5. Ty Gibbs was 5th, Bubba Wallace 4th, Harrison Burton 3rd, Eric Almirola, and Chase Briscoe. So the things that we were watching for on this race were we had Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex Jr. fighting for that 15 coveted points that you get for being the regular season champion. And then you had your final playoff spot that was being fought pretty much between Bubba Wallace and Ty Gibbs. I don't think any of these other guys were going to be doing anything. Somebody else to note, Front Row Motorsports, Riley Hearst in the 36. Again, this dude can run. He qualified 6th, and he was up there running really well. He did good. Once again, put him in better equipment that's not going to fail him, and he can go out there and run and race. I think what's holding him back is his equipment, and that's a lot of same song and dance for some of these people. You've heard me talk about Corey LaJoie. Corey LaJoie, I think he's a really good driver. People will argue that with me, but you put him in better equipment, he can go out there and run. Look at Kyle Larson in the 42. He was good, but then he bumps into a Hendrick Motorsports car, and he wins a championship. Noah Gragson, I think he's another guy that's got some really good talent. It's going to take him a while to get back up to the Cup Series, but if I'm him, I'm not taking anything less than a main team going out there, or somebody that's actually competing. Legacy is not that team, and I don't think it will be that team. They're going to be a middle of the road, hang out with Spire, hang out with, unfortunately, I hate to say it, Front Row Motorsports, because they've had some really strong showing. And also, JTG. I like the spotter for Ricky Stenhouse. He was gracious enough to speak to me, and he got out there, and, he's really genuine dude god. Ricky Stenhouse looks like he's a good guy. It's just, I've seen the history of Ricky with what he's done in the past, and maybe he can turn around. JTG, maybe they can get something going and keep going and make a strong running. I don't want to knock them out. I think they're more like a top 10-ish with, get your win every so often. And let's see them turn that around, see what happens. So we're just going in there. So stage 1, you had your guys. You had some guys sit there and pit before and then come out and run. And then you had some guys that just ran the whole stage. So our stage 1 will go top 5. We had Joey in 5th, Ty Gibbs 4th, Kevin Harvick 3rd, Christopher Bell 2nd, and Truex 1st. With that stage right there, Truex clinched the regular season championship. Denny Hamlin, actually, excuse me, it wasn't that one. It was the end of 2nd, if I remember correctly, because Denny Hamlin did get some points, but this put Martin Truex Jr. at 21 playoff points, which will be very pivotal when we talk towards the end of this race. And then moving on into stage 2, we had Keselowski, Kyle Busch, Suarez, Bowman, and Byron as your top 5. Truex did get, he sat towards the back, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 26, because he claims his gut called it. And yeah, stage 2, we had the big wreck. We had Ryan Blaney up there running, Ty Gibbs right behind him. And, Ty Gibbs got into the back of Blaney and turned him. And next thing you know, you had your big wreck. And this wasn't even the wild wreck that happened. This was collect all the cars. And it collected a lot of guys that could have been running for playoffs, possibly. But then you also had people that were trying to get more playoff points, more stage points to move up and get more points going into the regular season, into the playoffs. So it was just big. And I think it just boils down to Ty Gibbs' inexperience. And you say he's run and he's a champion in Xfinity. It's different. These cars are very different in the way they operate. So yeah, that was something big that happened. And it was wild. That just collected a lot of people. Ryan Blaney, some people equated his hit to the same hit that Dale Sr. hit in 2001. And just luckily he had safer barrier, Hans device, and all that stuff. And, I mean, unfortunately, whenever you have somebody that passes away due to a race, more safety measures come out there instead of afterwards because you're not thinking about it. And people have argued that that's saved Blaney's life, those safety measures, how hard he hit. So it was wild. But that wasn't even the most wildest wreck. We go out and we look in stage 3. It was, I want to say 8 laps to go, 7 laps to go at the end of the race, and you had Ryan Preece and I want to make sure I can see if I can find out who was with him. I think it was Briscoe with him. They got something happened with those guys racing back there in the back. They were towards the back of the pack. They both spun, went sideways. Ryan Preece was going sideways. The differentiation between the grass and concrete and just that changing. Preece got airborne. He flipped about 10 times. I mean, spun quick and heavy, and then luckily landed on with the chassis upright. And he was able to get out of the car. He was visibly shaken up. And, I mean, obviously, you flipped 10, 15 times. I say 15 because some people might have counted a little bit more than that, but I think NBC said 10 times, and we've had some other people that have counted it, and 10 times. I mean, it was brutal. And I will have to say to NASCAR, kudos on this part where the cab of the vehicle stayed together. Underbody stayed together. The roof stayed together, did not get crushed. All of that worked out and protected him. I do agree with somebody else that I've talked to that listens to this podcast that, you got to design some of these parts to come flying off, especially if it helps slow the vehicle down, catch it and drag in the grass, slow it down and then break off and slow down. Do something. It's tough to see that. And I know some of the stuff with like tethered parts or, parts just sticking more together is due to an accident that we had. I think it was at Talladega earlier this year, or even some of these other ones where they're trying to fortify this vehicle so you don't have stuff fly out and hit contestants. You don't have to hit spectators, all those kind of people to see what happens. But at the same time, I've also heard, and just going through with this race, it was a lot of pack racing, a lot of single car racing, couple, 2-line racing. But it was pack racing, and it makes it tough to pass. It makes it tough to move around because you can't pull out into a third lane unless you have help because you're just going to fall back and drop like a rock. I'd like to see them make some kind of a package change to eliminate a pack racing and see what they can do from there. The pack racing, I think, kind of takes from it, similar to what Watkins Glen and we had at Indianapolis were. I mean, those were snooze fests, in my opinion, because of just how the car handles. And I know they're working on that aero package to make that better. We'll see what happens there. I've heard comments, and it's not going to happen anytime soon, just the way this car just came out. But, put them on smaller rims, put them, get rid of the tapered spacers and just the splitters, like zero downforce pretty much, and let the true drivers come out. I don't know how that will work. And I've kind of I've expressed my speculation with this person that I've talked to about this. I see where he's coming from. I don't know how it will work. But anyway, let's go ahead and finish off the Coke Zero Sugar 400 race recap. Let's go ahead and start with the 10th. Corey LaJoie showed up, made a strong finish, 10th. A lot of that was because you had half the field get knocked out. But you got Corey LaJoie sitting there. Harvick's 9th, Byron 8th, Kyle Busch 7th, Alex Bowman 6th, Logano 5th, Elliott 9th, Almirola 10th, Keselowski 2nd, and Buescher got his 3rd win in 5 races. He's had a really strong car. He's had some really good runnings. I don't know how that will translate going forward, but you can't discredit him for this. And I'll give it to Brad Keselowski for not trying to get out in front and get that win. He stayed with his teammate. The problem I have with this one here is me being a Truex fan. He's not anywhere to be seen, and he had a really strong car and strong running, and they played it very safe. He had a gut feeling to move back, but you're dealing with like 5 laps to go. And he finished 24th because he dropped to the back. I think that was very... I wish he wouldn't have done that because there's nothing happened. I think he would have gotten a lot better, maybe got some more points moving forward, see what happens. But he did clinch that regular season. He was just trying to get out there with a clean car. So I can understand it. I think I wouldn't have done it. I would have told him to just run the race and get out there. Records or checkers at the end. You got the regular season champion. Let's do it. So let's go ahead and look at your playoff standings. Our 16. So our final spot that was not locked in went to Bubba Wallace. This is his first playoff run, and we'll see what happens with him. I think, no disrespect to Bubba, I'm not a fan of his, but I think he's going to be a one and done. He's going to be out on this first stage. Let him prove me wrong. Again, I'm one of these little guys that doesn't, I'm not in the sport. I just do a little podcast. So he's not going to look at me and say anything. Then, so looking at the outside, looking in, we have Michael McDowell, Ricky Stenhouse, Kevin Harvick, Bubba Wallace, Daniel Suarez. Those guys are looking out. We have our 2 winners. We have our Daytona 500 winner, and then we also have our Indianapolis road course winner sitting on the outside looking in, just because those guys, that falls into that. They don't run in the top pack with the equipment. And so they don't get a lot of stage points. They're trying to survive and get points. And hey, that's what you got to do because purses change, and if you can build up your money to get stuff. Michael McDowell mentioned that on the Denny Hamlin podcast after his win in Indianapolis about that. This win can allow us to get a better machine to help us out and get better tolerances. So let's see if they can translate that on and get something going forward. So looking at our top, which will stay in at least, I feel, for at least one. You have your 12, then I think you go to 8. Or 8, or 12, 10, 8, 4. Don't quote me on that. But you have William Byron and Martin Truex Jr. William Byron's first because he's got 5 wins. Truex has got 3 wins. But they're both tied in points with 36 playoff points. I was unaware when I kept looking at everything because I was wondering how Truex wasn't first. They gave second place 8 points and so on forward. I thought you won the regular season, you got 15 points, and everybody else had to deal with that. I was wrong, but you're looking at these guys. They have 11 points higher than Denny Hamlin, and this is going to reset. So I see they're going to sit up there, maybe 1, 2, 3. They're going to float around those if they don't have any strong showings. But we're going to Darlington. Darlington's a strong track for a Denny, a Truex, Byron's one out there. I see them going to the final 4. Those 2 guys, I think those are your 2 odd-end favorites to win the championship. And we'll see what happens with that going forward. We're looking at, the odds. Truex has just a slightly better odd to win the championship at a 14-1 than a 12-1. Going forward, those were the opening odds. Byron's a 5-1. Truex is a 17-4. So, they're giving it to Truex. If you argue, put your tinfoil hat on with me right now, and we'll take it off. But tinfoil hat on, Hendrick Motorsports with their mystery cautions and so on and so forth. You're looking at William Byron's going to be your 2023 Cup Series champion. Put your money on it. Let's roll. All right, let's take our tinfoil hat back off. And we're moving into Larson is going to be our 6-1 odd. And then we'll round out the 4 with Denny Hamlin at 6-1. So those are your top 4 there that they think. Kyle Busch is coming close, 8-1. And your long shot, if you want to bet $1 and maybe win a ton, 150-1, you got Michael McDowell. 151, you got Ricky Stenhouse. 40-1, Bubba Wallace. I guess because he's with 2311 and he's had some strong showings. I think that 45 car is hands down better than that 23 car, especially in the driver. If you want to call experience, whatever, I think the 45, if they can get their act together because they've hurt themselves bad, the lug nut, all that stuff. So, yeah, and he's 20-1. Then you got Keselowski, 20-1. Harvick's 20-1. Hair Club for Men, Joey Logano, 16-1. Ross Chastain, 16-1. He's very, in my opinion, he's a very lackluster, abysmal season, in my opinion. Blame it on, people saying you can't do that Hail Melon stuff anymore. You got to tone yourself down. They shouldn't have done that. Let the dude run. I mean, he's running and racing. If you're going to get, prim and proper and complain about, rubbing and racing and move you and you can't handle your car. Now, granted, he did punt a couple, but look at Joey Logano. He does the same stinking thing. He did it at Pocono. He did it at Pocono the past 2 years where he moves people out of the way and they're like, and he's just so caught up in his own mind. And we'll cover that too with, in my opinion, a boneheaded comment that he made. And Dale Jr. kind of agrees with me to an extent. But we'll cover that in a little bit later. Then we got Ryan Blaney, 16-1. Seabell, 12-1. And so that's your betting odds going forward. Looking at your other guys, and this doesn't make any sense. I mean, your playoff field, okay, number one, William Byron, his championship's on. We talked about 5-1. Last time in the championship, he got eliminated in the round of 8 and 22, 12 and 19, and 21. Eliminated in round of 16, 20, 20, and did not make the playoffs in 18. His best tracks are Phoenix. We're going to that track last, so we'll see what happens with that. Go figure. That's the last track we go to, and he's going to be running there. That's something else that I don't like is let's shake up let's not go to the championship track twice. I like the fact when we went to Homestead once and it was the championship. Pick another track to go to. I mean, we go to Pocono once. I'm not saying we want to go to Pocono, but just think about it. Let's do that a little bit different. And I know contracts, and they want to go somewhere that NASCAR owns. NASCAR owns Phoenix. So we move into our number 2 guy, Truex. He won in 17. Reached his championship 4 in 15, 18, 19, and 21. 18, he just got beat out by Joey. 19, I think it was that or Kyle Busch. I can't remember. And then 19 was Joey or Kyle Busch. 19 was, in my opinion, sabotaged because these guys know better and they swapped the tires. I mean, this dude was leading. He should have won 19. Should be a 2-time championship winner. 17 and 19, in my opinion. Something happened. He was eliminated in round 8 in 2020. Eliminated around 12 and 16 and did not make the playoffs in 14 or 22. He got beat out by 4 points last year, and he didn't have any wins. So this dude can run up top. If he can get out of his home mind and stop overthinking things, I think this dude's unstoppable, and he can ride out in the sunset with one more championship, maybe 2 more, whenever he wants to retire. If his thing is his team slightly hurts him, but that's with every team. What hurts him is his brain. He overthinks too much, in my opinion. And he just needs to shut up, calm down, and go out and run the race. If he can focus on that, go ahead. William Byron, we talked about him. So just moving forward, that's the end of our Cup Series running of everything. We'll get into the weekend, what's going on the weekend here soon. But let's go ahead and talk about some news. We'll go ahead and dive into what Denny Hamlin said the past week and a half. First of all, he goes out and puts blame, I think we were talking about this before, on Chase Elliott for running out of fuel. He ran out of fuel, and Denny Hamlin had the audacity to come out and say Chase should have known better. I disagree with him wholeheartedly on that one. That's his crew's responsibility. Chase's mind, he's trying to make it into the chase because he's got to win to get in. He can't just point in. He's looking to win. He's looking to pass cars. He's focused. He's laser focused on racing. And then you want to go around and say, Denny, would you have thought about that? He says, yeah, hindsight's 20/20. I mean, that's why I call myself the armchair crew chief, because I'll sit there and I'll listen to the back at the end of the race and be like, well, they should have done that. They should have done this. And I don't have racing experience like these guys do. But, I see stuff on the back end. It's just like armchair quarterbacking. So, moving on to this, I think Denny was wrong there. Incorrect. Then he said something that, and I'll repeat what he said. He said, if it was between the 23 and the 54 in front of him, he's going to push the 23, his own team, to get in the playoffs and not his teammate. His owned team, not his teammate. I wonder what Joe Gibbs is going to say about that. Dale Jr. came out and said, yeah, I probably would have done the same thing, but I would have kept my mouth shut about it and not told anybody. He's like, well, that's why we love Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin is, I don't know what to say about Denny. I'm not a big fan of him. I don't like the way he acts. I obviously have disagreeing opinion on what he says, but, he's entitled to it, and he'll come back to me like you're just a little spectator. Like, whatever. I'm still entitled to my opinion, and you guys listen to my opinion, and you can argue with me, and we can have a talk about it. And if you want to come on here, I'm not going to say no. And if one of these guys, like Denny Hamlin, wants to go in here and say some stuff, as long as he's respectful, he can come on here too. I don't care. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. And then I think Denny Hamlin's not going back to Joe Gibbs next year. I think he's in a conundrum like Kyle Busch was, where people don't want to sponsor him. Yeah, he's got FedEx, but is FedEx coming back with him? I don't know. Can he bring FedEx with him? And it goes back to the idea that we talked about last week, where 2311 was talking at Michigan. Maybe they go to Ford. Maybe he buys the charter from Stuart Haas from the 10 car and runs Ford. And they field a 3-car team, and he runs for himself. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, we have some question marks going up because you got to see what Trackhouse is going to do to get SVG into a car again. Are they going to try and just, qualify their way in? SVG's a really talented driver. They possibly could. So, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Other news is going on is Penske is swapping crew chiefs for Austin Cindric and Harrison Burton. I don't think that's going to fix it. I think they think there's something wrong with Cindric's crew. I just don't think Cindric's that good of a driver in the Cup Series cars. And we've talked about in the past. I mean, we talked about with Haley Deegan. She's not good in trucks. She could be good elsewhere. We don't know. I think Cindric's just not that good in the Cup cars. I think he's up there because his dad is on the team. I mean, it's almost a Ty Gibb-esque thing, but you don't hear too much about Cindric in that. Other news, Carson Hocevar is going to be piloting the 42 at Darlington, for Legacy. So we'll see what happens there and see how he can handle that. I think this guy's got a good future going forward. We'll see how that handles. So going back onto Legacy Motor, and we had the news of GMS, two separate entities, mind you. Let's get that record straight. Two separate entities, GMS Racing and Trucks, GMS Fabrication. They are separate than Legacy. And I had somebody talk to me on social media about this, like, well, whatever. Since Jimmy Johnson has joined Legacy, it has been nothing but bad. One, with the news of Toyota, hey, you're going to switch to Toyota? That's Jimmy Johnson. That's not Richard Petty. You just lost all your ties to Chevrolet to give you decent equipment for the rest of the season. And you can argue, no, they're not going to do that. Yeah, they are. And then you move on to the Noah Gragson. Very outspoken, fans like him. Seems to be like a good guy. Something pops up from 3 years ago. 3 years ago. Somebody had a hand in that. Rumor has it that somebody that doesn't like Noah Gragson found it and sent it over to Legacy, and then the dominoes fell. I've heard arguments, it's because Jimmy Johnson's very bland coming from Hendrick. Hendrick kind of tames their guys, and we'll see what happens from there. And then you have this where, just because of Toyota, GMS is not going to be running. And somebody said, oh, well, Jimmy Johnson had no hand in it. Jimmy Johnson made the decision to switch to Toyota. That's what hurt GMS and trucks. That's what's causing that. I mean, there's a direct correlation. Is it all of it? Probably not. But it's a good majority of it. And everybody thinks Jimmy Johnson's the best thing since sliced bread. The argument that, 7-time should have been unanimously put into the Hall of Fame with Chad Knaus. You had other guys in there, I think, that deserved more than they did on not first ballot. You talk to some people, tinfoil hat time again, Hendrick Motorsports. They cheated their way in a lot more than everybody else did. But outside of Hendrick, Jimmy's not a good racer up here. Yeah, he probably been running the trucks well that he started off with. I don't know what they call those trucks, but it's not like Xfinity or Craftsman Truck Series. But running those trucks, running stuff like that. But look at his IndyCar. He had 2 years or so in there. He should have picked it up and ran it, in my opinion. Especially if he's this high and mighty first ballot NASCAR Hall of Famer, he should have been able to do that. Look at the 2 races. Well, only one because Jimmy, for a series of unfortunate event, I'm not going to hold that against him. At COTA, didn't do well. Yeah, you could argue equipment, whatever, but he never ran up front. He should have been able to run closer to the front, even if the equipment expires. So I don't think Jimmy Johnson's as great as people think he thinks. He brought a lot of people to the sport. Yeah, okay. I won't argue some of that stuff, but when it comes to his accolades, I think some of them are inflated. It's like the Dodgers in 2020. They think they won the World Series. Paperwork says they won the World Series, but they won on a shortened COVID season. There's a lot of people that are probably staying with me on that one. But anyway, moving forward, that's what we got going on there. And let's go ahead and catch the back end of our closing out segment of the podcast. We have our weekend schedule for Darlington. So Darlington, we are running Xfinity and Cup. These are both night races, if I remember correctly. Xfinity's not so much a night race. That's normal time. So we're going to start off on Saturday. You have your Xfinity practice and qualifying that will be streaming on NBC Sports Plus. That's supposed to be 10:35 and 11:05. Then you have your practice and qualifying for Cup Series at 12:35 and 1:20 Eastern on Saturday. That will be televised on USA, Radio MRN, Sirius XM. And then we have our Xfinity race 3:30 on USA and MRN. And then we're looking at our Cookout Southern 500, 6 Eastern on Sunday, Labor Day, USA and MRN for that. That one's going to be fun to watch. I like watching Darlington. I like watching some of these short tracks like that, Darlington, Martinsville. I'm not that big into Bristol because it's Wreckfest. I think it's a wild race. It's fun. It's just not one of my top ones. I like watching these shorter tracks. Those 1.5 miles are so snoozy to me, in my opinion. Super Speedway's starting to get there, and I always said that Talladega was my favorite track. So we'll see what happens going forward. We got a lot of stuff moving, a lot of moving parts here. We got, nearing the end of our regular season with Xfinity, and we are just starting off playoffs. So we'll see what happens with all that and going forward. So, hey guys, I appreciate you guys listening. This was a long one, just a lot of rant and raves. Probably starting to get a little bit more into rant and raves on my side, try to shorten up on recaps, but still give you guys I don't want to get away from recaps on the races and my opinions and stuff, but I want to go on to some of these rant and raves every so often. Thanks, guys, for listening to the podcast. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you back after the Darlington races, and we'll see you then. Have a good one.